It's time for the big one. KSI versus Tommy Fury. Live on DAZN, Misfits Boxing. We're doing a live stream for it on the Pain Game YouTube channel. We'll see you all there on the night of the fight. Now, I try not to make my mind up about these fights until I sit down, go through everything, and the answer's usually there. However, there's something I've been thinking about this fight on the run-up to it, and that is that KSI might have a better chance than Jake Paul. Now, that's not me saying he's a better fighter than Jake Paul, and that's why. I just think styles make fights, and this won't be Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury. And a lot of people seem to have overlooked that on the run-up to this. Yeah, Jake Paul's an influencer, KSI's an influencer, but they fight really differently. Jake Paul is more of a traditional style boxer. He's more orthodox. He's more what you would expect. And Tommy Fury, therefore, was in there with something he kind of knew how to deal with. He did struggle at times even still, but he's seen that before. Whereas KSI, for me, is far more of a raw product than Jake Paul. You could argue he's quicker than Jake, potentially more explosive and more unpredictable because he is so raw. If this was a football match, it's a bit like bringing a striker from a team in a lower league who's banging the goals in against lesser opposition and trying him at the top level. And sometimes that really works, you know, like Jamie Vardy, for example. I don't know if he's a football fan, but it can work. But we just don't know. Like, KSI isn't as refined as some of these boxers we've seen at this level, but he knocks people out. And that's the whole Jamie Vardy comparison of, you know, he just scores goals. He may not look as pretty as what other people do, but he knows how to get the job done. And a quote that kind of sums this fight up for me is from Mike Tyson. And Mike Tyson once said, "You can either fight for the knockout or you can fight for the decision, but you can't do both." And KSI, he fights for the knockout. The man's a gambler, and that takes balls. Like, you know, we watched Vidal Riley's fight the other night, and the guy got in there just to survive. He wasn't willing to risk it to try and force the win to happen for himself. He was willing to just go the distance and get out there with his teeth. KSI won't do that. It will be all or nothing. And that alone gives him a real chance. And that comes back to the point I was making about Jake Paul. If you look at the Jake Paul fight versus Tommy Fury, he fought a sensible fight, a cautious fight, but was trying to get his in when he could and cover up as best as he could when he was becoming the nail and not the hammer. And he kind of did the same thing with Nate Diaz, you know. He fought a defensively intelligent fight, but he wasn't risking everything in order to force a knockout. And when you do that, you create openings for yourself, but for the other guy as well. And that's why the chances of this fight ending in a knockout for either guy are immediately raised. I like to always sort of put the fight in like the third round when things are sort of really in the middle of the heat of the battle. Still got enough juice in the tank to see what the technique's like, see that left hook landing there. And Jake Paul really did help us see where the vulnerabilities are in Tommy's game, and that left hook landed a lot. And KSI has a good left hook. He's hurt multiple people with that in the past.
The way to go when he falls in.
Ooh, that jab was good from Jake Paul. And that is one thing which I don't think KSI has shown enough of in his last two fights. He was looking for the one-hitter quitter from the get-go, and I just think that it will be a bit more complicated than that with Tommy. You're going to have to set things up. You're going to have to throw that jab more. And with authority, like sometimes he just puts the jab out there just to sort of work his way into distance, and then he throws his bigger shots. You can't telegraph stuff with Tommy like that. You know, it's going to have to be a bit more intelligent and disguised in there. One thing I do give Tommy credit for is his work rate is decent. It's consistent. He doesn't come out quickly, but it's very solid throughout the fight. He never gives you too much time to breathe and rest. The difference is KSI is going to come out and sprint. Again, it's chaos, and that's what he's trying to create, is chaos. He doesn't want you fighting a nicely paced out boxing match where you can get your bearings in there and set things up. He wants a war, and he has to create that. And looking back at it, I just think Jake Paul's game plan wasn't quite right to create the storm that you need to bring down a Tommy Fury. One thing I will say is Tommy was on the back foot a lot in this fight. He wasn't the dominant fighter, despite being the more skilled guy. Now, the real tricky thing when I'm looking at this footage is I'm trying to imagine KSI in these scenarios, but the fighters KSI fought are so much worse than Tommy Fury. It's very hard for us to get a real eye test going of how good KSI is, because he's beating guys who are offering very little resistance. So when I'm seeing Jake do things and take advantage of moments. It's hard to know if KSI has that ability. The beauty of it is for KSI, Tommy can't really study his footage either. It didn't last long, and the other guys weren't that good. To know his level and know what he's really fully capable of is impossible. We're really trying to make educated guesses here. You see, Jake is really decent at covering up here. Jake at this level, for influencer level, is really well-rounded. That's the thing I'll give Jake. He's probably the most well-rounded influencer boxer. I don't think KSI has shown the defensive skills he has up to now. That's all I can say. While KSI isn't as well-rounded, he might be more of an offensive threat to Tommy in this fight because he is more explosive, he's quicker, he's willing to risk it all and to throw his whole entire body and overcommit. The problem with that is you can walk onto stuff. And with Tommy having a rapid lightning jab, it's going to increase the power of that jab as you're fucking walking onto it. So I think the likelihood of the game plan for a KSI, it'll be chaos in spots. You can't just go out full-blown tornado. You have to manage your energy. But when you go, he has to go for it big time and hope that Tommy can't time him because it is so chaotic.
Fletcher's landing well, then getting back.
See that head movement from Jake there? I've not seen that from KSI yet. Now, part of the reason is the guys KSI fought weren't barely throwing enough. I don't know if he can do that, but I've not seen it. And the reason Jake can do that in that fight is because he had fought seasoned veteran MMA guys who were used to boxing a lot. And he'd incrementally increased the difficulty of his opponents working his way up to Tommy. KSI has just fast-tracked it. And that is another worry I've got because you want to build up. You want to be ready and you want to get that experience so that when things are getting tough in there, you've been there before. And I think that Jake did very well for that reason. I've not seen KSI in the fire like that yet. And sparring is one thing, but Jake had been in there with the real deal a few times before Tommy. Another thing I think when I watch this fight is Jake has a big head and big shoulders and can probably take a decent punch. Tommy was really throwing a lot into these punches. And with KSI being a smaller guy than Tommy, there's no two ways about it. He's much smaller in my opinion. I think JJ could cut down to 165 and Tommy's struggling to get to 183. Will Tommy's punches, because of that gung-ho style that JJ has and the fact that JJ is a smaller guy than Jake Paul, will they have more of an impact on JJ than they did on Jake Paul? Possibly. But Tommy isn't a finisher. Like when you watch him in his fights, he doesn't fight for the kill. Taking him out of his comfort zone and forcing him to sprint with you, I think is a good strategy. He's not taught to just go gung-ho. That's not the way he's been raised. Because Tommy's been taught to control a fight, use your jab, box him, don't fight him. That's what the Furies do. It's only later in life that Tyson's changed his style a bit. To take him to an uncomfortable place is the best way to beat him. This is KSI face temper.
I get to range contemporary.
You see what I mean with the jab there? He's not really using it with authority. It's just to get him to enter with the jab. And I think against Tommy, we'll have to have more on it. And this is the thing with JJ. You see his punching accuracy sometimes in these fights is a little sloppy because of the style of fight he's creating. It's wild, it's chaotic. He's not giving Temper a minute to breathe here. He's breathing down his neck, but he's missing a lot. But when he does land, you see the reaction he gets is fuck this from Temper. You see, JJ wants a scrap. And his technique looks miles off of Tommy Fury here. I'm not even going to say it's even remotely close. It doesn't look close. That is kind of the point. You see, he likes to do this a lot on his tiptoes to set a shot up with that explosiveness, and there you go. And that's the kind of power he does have. I've spoken to many boxers about this, even Tony Jeffries, big-time boxing YouTuber, shout out to him, and he said, when you spar guys who are like that, it's sometimes them who give you the most problems than the stereotypical boxers that you're used to boxing week in, week out, because they're doing wild, unpredictable shit. They don't behave in the way your brain is trained to anticipate a boxer to throw. And the issue with this is, you don't get 5 goes and you can spar him every week, and then the 5th week, you're like, okay, I know what you're going to do now. You get 1 go at it. We've seen this recently in the UFC with Israel Adesanya losing his belt. He came up against an unorthodox guy, a style that you never normally see in the UFC, and you get 1 go at it, and he robbed him of his belt there and then. And what shot knocked him down? The left hook. What shot was Tommy Fury getting hit with by Jake Paul? The left hook. And Jake Paul's left hook isn't his best shot. You know, it's that big overhand right for him. And it looks like KSI's might be more effective from that footage. Joe just fought like such an old man, didn't he? Joe got hit with a punch before he even knew it was getting thrown, man. And I think the idea for JJ is kind of a Deontay Wilder style game plan in. We're going to give up some rounds. Fuck the boxing match. We're going for the knockout. And we're going to leap the fuck in with every pound of body weight we have and throw it all onto that chin. There's that unpredictability. And it's wild. But it's getting Joe backing up. One thing I'll give JJ is I think his gas tank is probably going to be majorly underestimated by the Furies. He can fight all night. And if he forces Tommy to fight at a pace he's not used to, we may see Tommy with those big muscles and big shoulders all of a sudden being a bit sluggish, a bit tired. It could happen. Although I'll give him credit, he has said he's trained harder than ever for this fight. So here's the issue is there's just so little coming back from KSI's opponent that we get such little idea of where his defense is. And the reason there's so little coming back is when they feel the power, they're timid. And this is what KSI is telling everyone. You don't realize how hard I hit. And this has been verified by people like Vidal Riley who've said he hits way harder than he should for his weight. KSI leaving his head out in no man's land there. Good jab, better jab. There you go, another good one. And he left his chin out in the open there. And if Joe Fournier can time you, that's Father Time right there. He's old. Tommy will be able to time you. And this is the worry here, is there's just leaving the chin open that much. You notice Jake Paul never did that. This is not about winning that boxing match. It's about landing that one clean shot. You can see JJ is not even entertaining throwing too much. He's just waiting for his opening here. Bang! And there you go. There was the big shot. See Joe backpedaling in trouble, and that was the final elbow that took him out. The elbow was accidental, that's obvious. But this is how they're planning the downfall of Tommy Fury, to land that one big shot. Tommy's going to have way better defense than Joe Fournier, so it is a worry. But I have to say with KSI, he was fighting very open because of who he was fighting. You're fighting Tommy Fury, you're going to tighten it up more, you're going to be a bit more defensively responsible. So I'm not just looking at this going, oh, he's going to fight exactly like this. He's not. I get that. I think KSI is more likely to beat Tommy than Jake was, even though Jake is arguably the more complete fighter, just because of how unpredictable and raw he is. But also, I think he's more likely to lose in a more dramatic way, either a worse beatdown or a finish than Jake Paul, because Jake Paul was tighter defensively, and KSI isn't fighting to get a decision and to see a fight out and be sensible. He's fighting to kill him. And Fury hasn't really shown us that killer instinct. Like, he's been in there with a lot of guys who you'd think you'd destroy them, and they've made it to a decision with them. So if there's an edge to KSI, it is without doubt the killer instinct. So I guess whoever closes the gap between Tommy needing to be more of a killer when the fire comes and KSI technically being at a disadvantage, they've both had work to put in, and maybe whoever closes that gap is the one who'll be victorious. Because YouTube boxing was always moving and Jake Paul then started to carry the flag while KSI went off and did his music thing, people kind of forgot KSI took a few years out of the game. And since he's been back, he fought Swarms, Pineda, Joe Fournier, and FaZe Temper. Like, none of those guys are anywhere near the level of what we're talking about in Tommy Fury. So not only did KSI start training late, he also took a big break in the middle of it. Tommy made a good point, I think, in the in the face-off, where he's like, the time in is where the truth is, and you haven't put the time in that I have. It's as simple as that. And logically, he should be 100% right. Tommy Fury should win this fight. We all know that. Like, odds-wise, that should not be up for debate. I think Vidal Riley said on a video, it would be a miracle if KSI won. But what gets miracles done? Willpower. No one has more than KSI. One-shot power. He has that. We've seen in boxing matches, technique can be overridden by more power. Deontay Wilder has made a fucking boxing career out of it. It's possible. And self-belief, well, no one's got more of that than him. And I think the biggest edge I can give KSI is in that arena, in that moment, when they are walking down to the ring, Tommy Fury will be way more nervous than KSI. KSI grew up in front of crowds. No one in that moment will be calmer than him. And you will get, whatever this is, the best version of KSI on that night. His ability to recreate what he does in sparring will be better than Tommy Fury's. Because I believe if Tommy Fury is loose and relaxed like he is in sparring and there's no pressure, then all of the years of experience will take effect immediately. But I don't believe Tommy Fury will be able to recreate that version of him on that night the way KSI can. So there's a lot of X factors and intangibles here. And I really, truly believe it's possible for KSI to land that punch and to knock Tommy Fury out. The question is, Willie, if I was to put my mortgage on this, you'd bet on Tommy, right? Obviously, like, you know, all of the skills, experience and all that, it's with Tommy. But I really believe that KSI can do this. And I'm going to say, KSI, by knockout. I'll see you there on the night of the fight on the Pain Game YouTube channel. We will be live with all the lads reacting. I'll be full of alcohol as well. It's gonna be good. There's more prediction videos coming out as well on the Pain Game YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. Hit that like button and I'll see you on the next one.